He had it all: power, wealth, and a last name that opened every door. But one scandal was enough to turn the millionaire into a public disgrace. Friends vanished, lovers showed their true colors, and the life of luxury crumbled to dust in just a few days. At rock bottom, he finally saw who was truly willing to stay. That's when he met a simple woman, someone unimpressed by money, who could see the truth behind the masks. A story of downfall, pain, and redemption that shows how sometimes, only in failure do we discover what real love means. The spotlight no longer shined on Christopher Miller, it burned his skin like a public trial. Newspapers splashed his face across their front pages in bold red letters: "The corrupt heir." With every headline, his name turned into shame. The phone wouldn't stop ringing, not with invitations to parties but with debt collectors and insults. Inside the mansion, silence filled the rooms, clashing with the deafening noise of criticism outside. In the empty hall, his footsteps echoed like a cruel reminder of everything he had lost. Family portraits were ripped from the walls by the police, safes were sealed, cars towed away. Christopher stood by, powerless. "Please, not that too," he whispered as his father's wine collection was carried off. No one listened, only the cold sound of locks and seals snapping shut. Friendships disappeared in a matter of hours. Those who once flattered him now attacked without mercy. Invitations, messages, and false embraces vanished like smoke. He called old allies, only to hear blunt replies: "I can't get involved, Chris. You understand." That sentence cut deeper than any headline. For the first time, he felt truly alone. The collapse hit more than his bank accounts, it struck his heart. Christopher looked into the mirror and didn't recognize the man staring back. The unshaven beard, the bloodshot eyes, the defeated expression. The pride that once carried him had fallen apart, just like the walls of luxury now reduced to ruins. The mirror no longer reflected a man, but a stranger. Outside, reporters shouted over the blinding flashes of cameras: "Christopher, is it true your entire fortune has been frozen? Are you planning to flee the country?" He gave no answers, only walked forward in silence, carrying an invisible cross. But with every question left unanswered, one thought grew stronger: how far could this fall take him? The golden mansion was gone. All that remained was a cramped apartment downtown. The floor creaked, the walls were stained with dampness, and the window barely let in the morning light. Christopher sat on the thin mattress, still unable to believe this would be his new home. The silence was broken only by neighbors arguing loudly in the hallway. Once, drivers waited for him in luxury cars. Now, he squeezed into overcrowded buses. The smell of sweat, the rush of strangers, the constant jolting pressed against him like a punishment. "Excuse me, are you getting off?" someone muttered, shoving past impatiently. Christopher lowered his head, forcing himself to adjust to a reality that no longer matched his former life. Each ride was an open wound to his pride. The nights were the cruelest. Once surrounded by parties, fine dinners, and shallow company, he now ate instant noodles alone, under the dim glow of a yellowed lamp. The phone, which used to buzz non-stop with invitations, lay silent on the table. "Does anyone still think of me?" he whispered, his own voice echoing back with an unsettling emptiness. In that small apartment, even the furniture seemed to mock him. The wobbly chair creaked as if ready to collapse, the fridge groaned with strange noises, and the fan pushed out nothing but hot air. Christopher paced the floor, lost in thought, trying to understand how everything had fallen apart so quickly. Loneliness was a punishment far heavier than any material loss. Deep down, something was growing quietly, a mix of fear and anger. He couldn't bear the thought of being seen as a failure, yet he had no idea where to begin again. Memories of luxury felt more distant with each day, like a dream slipping beyond reach. The question pounding in his mind was, how long could he survive in this new world? The old wooden doors of the public school groaned as Christopher walked in for the first time. The smell of chalk, the chorus of children's voices, the peeling paint on the walls, it all felt like another planet. His expensive suits had been replaced by a wrinkled, plain uniform. He took a deep breath, trying to hide the shame burning in his chest. It didn't feel like a job, it felt like a trial. The principal introduced him as an assistant. He'll be helping with cleaning, organizing, wherever he's needed. Children stared at him with curiosity, some stifling laughter. Christopher swallowed hard. He had never held a broom before, but now he was forced to, under dozens of watchful eyes. The sound of a student's giggle echoed through the hallway, making his humiliation sharper. As he scrubbed the floor, memories of the luxurious board meetings he once commanded rushed back. The contrast was brutal. "Please, don't look at me like that," he muttered when a teacher passed by with a pitying glance. Every simple task felt like a sentence. Fingers once used to holding crystal glasses were now raw from harsh cleaning chemicals. During those first days, mistakes piled up. He spilled buckets, forgot instructions, even got lost in the hallways. Pride fought to survive, but reality crushed every trace of superiority. With each error, a new wave of laughter spread among the students. He pretended not to hear, but inside, he was bleeding in silence. At the end of the shift, exhausted and covered in dust, Christopher sat on a bench in the courtyard. The setting sun painted the sky orange, yet brought him no peace. He knew this adjustment would be painful. What he didn't yet understand was that this was only the first step towards something far greater. Still, the question lingered. How much longer could he endure this new life? The hallway was crowded with children running around when Christopher dropped a stack of notebooks. Papers scattered across the floor, and the sound of giggles cut through his pride. He bent down quickly, trying to gather everything before anyone noticed. That's when a firm voice came from behind. "Do you need help? Or are you just going to keep blocking the way?" Christopher looked up and met Hannah Wilson. Her hair was pulled back simply, her gaze steady, her posture radiating effortless authority. Unlike the women who had always surrounded him, she seemed unimpressed by his presence. He stammered, I'm sorry, I'm still not used to this." But Hannah only sighed and walked past, unwilling to waste time on excuses. In the teacher's lounge, their eyes crossed again. Christopher tried to start a conversation, hoping to break the ice. "So, what subject do you teach?" Hannah looked at him, indifferent. "Math. And I don't have time for empty talk." The blunt reply hit him harder than he expected. For the first time, a woman didn't melt at the sound of the Miller name. In the days that followed, her presence unsettled him. Always focused on her students, always firm with her words. There was a calmness about Hannah he couldn't understand. "Why don't you ever smile at me?" he dared to ask one day, trying to provoke her. She looked up from the board and answered, "Because you haven't given me a reason." The silence that followed spoke louder than any speech. Her disregard intrigued him more than all the admiration he had ever received. A strange, almost uncomfortable curiosity began to grow inside him. Who was this woman who couldn't be swayed by empty promises or memories of wealth? He couldn't explain it, but something pushed him to want to know more. Deep down, he sensed this meeting would change everything. The sun had barely risen when Christopher spilled a bucket of water in the hallway. The floor turned into a slippery mirror, and the children burst into laughter as he tried to contain the mess. "Look, the millionaire is mopping," shouted a boy, drawing more laughter from his classmates. Christopher's face burned, but he said nothing. He just cleaned in silence, swallowing his pride. In the classroom, he stumbled while carrying boxes of books. The pile tumbled to the ground, sending up dust and laughter. "Can you do anything right?" muttered a staff member, not even bothering to lower his voice. Christopher pretended not to hear, but the words cut through him like a blade. The man who once led board meetings was now a punchline in every corner. During recess, a stray ball hit him in the chest and nearly knocked him over. "Sorry, mister," a child called out, laughing as he ran off. Christopher's chest tightened. Never before had he been treated with so little importance. His title as heir meant nothing here. He was just another clumsy man trying to survive in a place that didn't respect him. From a distance, Hannah watched, expressionless. She saw him let out a heavy sigh as he picked up trash in the yard. She saw him wipe away tears in the privacy of an empty restroom. But she didn't step closer. She didn't offer help. She knew this was his fight, and maybe the only way he could learn. Still, something in her eyes betrayed a quiet compassion. At night, Christopher locked himself in his tiny room and remembered the lavish dinners, the fake applause, the interested smiles. All of it was gone, and what remained was only pain and silence. Yet within that pain, a new seed began to grow. The realization that maybe his life had never truly been real. And that thought haunted him more than his daily humiliation. The buzz started early. Once journalists discovered where Christopher worked, cameras crowded the school's entrance, and students peeked through the windows, laughing at the commotion. "Is it true you're a janitor now, Mr. Miller?" a reporter shouted, drawing laughter from onlookers. Christopher closed his eyes, struggling to stay calm, though his heart pounded like an unhinged drum. Headlines spread across social media within minutes. Pictures of him pushing cleaning carts went viral. Old friends resurfaced only to mock him, sending cruel messages. "Never thought you'd end up like this, Chris." Each notification reminded him that his downfall wasn't just financial, it was public, broadcast for the whole world to see. The shame was unbearable. In the middle of that chaos, a figure from the past appeared. Lauren Mitchell, his ex-girlfriend, walked into the school as if visiting the site of a disaster. Dressed flawlessly, she carried a venomous smile. "Christopher, you don't have to do this. Come back to me. I can still give you back what you lost." Her words were sweet, but laced with poison. He stared at her in silence, remembering how she once fed on his wealth and status. Now, her promises rang hollow. "I don't want your help, Lauren. That chapter is over." The coldness in his voice surprised even himself. She smiled, but her eyes betrayed the fury of someone who refuses rejection. In that instant, the past was severed for good. As he turned away, Christopher felt the weight of his choice. He had no friends, no support, and now no chance of returning to the luxury he once knew. Yet deep inside, he knew this break was necessary. The question tormenting him was whether he had the strength to move forward, facing not only poverty, but also the ghosts that refused to let him go. The first smile came when he least expected it. A young girl dropped her pencil case in the courtyard, and Christopher bent down to pick it up. "Thanks, mister," she said shyly. That simple word cracked something inside him. For the first time in so long, he wasn't called an heir, a crook, or a failure. He was simply someone present, someone who helped. In the days that followed, small gestures began to change him. He picked up forgotten balls, fixed broken toys, and even improvised funny stories to cheer up the younger children. The students who once laughed at his clumsiness now approached without fear. Their genuine laughter echoed like music through his silent life. One day, a young boy tugged at his arm. "Can you teach me to write my name the right way?" Christopher carefully took the pencil, guiding the child's trembling hand. "Like this, slowly. You can do it." When the boy smiled at seeing his name on the paper, Christopher felt something he had never experienced before: true pride. The teachers watched from a distance. Hannah, especially, noticed the change in his behavior. She saw him sit on the ground to play hopscotch, laughing as if he had forgotten who he was. She saw him cradle a child in his arms to calm her after a fall. Beneath the still rigid posture, there was a man stripping away his masks. At night, alone in his room, Christopher replayed the small embraces he had received during the day. Each simple gesture from the children was like a flame rekindling the humanity he had long forgotten. He still didn't understand why he felt so different, but he began to suspect his true transformation was only beginning. Conversations between Christopher and Hannah started by chance. In brief moments in the hallway, a comment about the students, a lingering glance. Little by little, words turned into confidences. "I never thought I could actually like this place," he admitted with a timid smile. Hannah didn't answer, but the softness in her eyes spoke louder than any words. In the empty courtyard, they stood side by side, watching the children play. Christopher dared to speak. "You know, you were the first person who didn't treat me like someone special, and I thank you for that." Hannah sighed, looking away. "I only treat people as they deserve." He smiled faintly, feeling that for the first time, someone saw him beyond the Miller name. The nights began to change as well. Christopher no longer shut himself in his room. He looked for excuses to spend more time at the school, helping with extra tasks, just to have the chance to hear her voice. Between silences and fleeting glances, something began to grow, something difficult to contain. His heart, once hardened by wealth and indifference, now beat faster in the presence of a simple teacher. But the truth didn't stay hidden for long. One afternoon, Hannah came across a forgotten newspaper on the teacher's desk. Christopher's photo splashed across a story about the Miller family scandals. The shock was immediate. She pulled away, her gaze sharp. "So that's it? You came here in disguise? To play with all of us?" The accusation cut deeper than any humiliation. Christopher tried to explain, but the words wouldn't come. "I'm not that man anymore," he stammered, but Hannah had already turned away, leaving him alone in the hallway. The sound of her footsteps echoed like a verdict. For the first time, he feared losing not his wealth, but the only person who had managed to see his new self. The auditorium was packed with journalists. Flashes burst like lightning, and the murmur grew louder by the minute. Christopher adjusted the microphone with trembling hands. His heart raced, but there was no turning back. "Good afternoon. I'm here to face my truth." The room fell silent. For the first time, he wasn't speaking as an heir, but as a broken man trying to rise again. The questions came like bullets. "Do you admit to the Miller family's crimes? Are you going to hide behind your father's name?" He took a deep breath, his voice steady despite the fear. "I won't hide. The Miller empire doesn't define who I am. Mistakes were made, but I won't be complicit in silence." Murmurs spread through the crowd. No one had expected such candor. In the front row, Benjamin Carter watched him with hard eyes. "You're destroying what's left of our family," his brother shouted, standing up. Christopher looked at him, the pain clear in his eyes. "I'd rather lose everything than keep living a lie." The public confrontation ripped open the air, exposing old wounds that had never healed. Mark Sullivan, the most relentless journalist, fired his accusation. "Is this just a performance to clean up your image?" Christopher didn't flinch. "No, I already lost everything. All I have left is the truth. And the truth is, I don't want to return to luxury. I want to rebuild my life with dignity." The silence that followed was heavy, almost sacred. Cameras captured every word, every expression. The man who had once embodied arrogance now stood bare before the world. There were no guarantees of forgiveness, no promise of reconciliation. But his stance made one thing clear: something inside him had changed forever. And deep down, one question lingered. Would anyone believe in his redemption? Days settled into a new rhythm. Christopher was no longer followed by cameras or surrounded by flatterers. Now, he walked calmly through the school corridors, carrying boxes of supplies or helping to tidy the courtyard. The glow that once came from expensive watches and exclusive parties now shone in the eyes of the children who ran to embrace him. Hannah still kept some distance, but little by little she noticed that he hadn't given up. Christopher was there, day after day, caring for the students, joining projects, giving his best. There were no disguises, no masks, just a man trying to start over. That constancy began to chip away at the wall of distrust she had built. One afternoon in the courtyard, a student handed Christopher a drawing. It showed him holding hands with the children, smiling. "You're our friend," the boy said. Christopher held the paper with tears in his eyes, realizing that, for the first time, he was receiving something genuine. That simple gesture weighed more than any fortune. Hannah approached, watching him hold the drawing with care. "I never thought I'd see you like this," she confessed softly. He smiled, not with arrogance, but with gratitude. "Neither did I." The silence between them was broken only by the children's laughter, as if fate itself were stitching together a new story, one woven from simplicity and true love. Without wealth but with dignity, Christopher discovered that his greatest treasure was never in safes or contracts. It was in the bonds he built, in the small hands that trusted him, in the eyes of a woman who was beginning to believe in his transformation. And even though the future was uncertain, he knew this: he would never go back to being the man he once was. Christopher lost fortune, status, and friends, but he discovered that the greatest wealth was the true love born out of simplicity. And what about you? Have you ever thought about who would truly stay by your side if everything fell apart? Share in the comments who the most important people in your life are, the ones who would never abandon you in difficult times. Don't forget to subscribe and keep following moving stories like this one.